The humid air of Vietnam clung like a shroud, thick with the stench of decay and the acrid tang of gunpowder. Beneath a sky that often wept torrential rains, the jungle pulsed with a life-and-death struggle, a relentless symphony of buzzing insects, distant explosions, and the ever-present whisper of fear. This was not a war of grand, sweeping battles, but a brutal, intimate conflict fought in the shadows, where every rustle of leaves could signify either a breeze or an enemy. It was a landscape that devoured innocence and forged legends, often in the same breath. Amidst this chaotic theater of war, a young Marine named Carlos Hathcock moved with a preternatural calm. He was a man of quiet demeanor, his words few, his gaze steady and deep-set. Born in the Arkansas backwoods, Hathcock had honed his skills, not on a firing range, but by hunting squirrels for dinner, a childhood spent in communion with the wilderness. This upbringing had instilled in him an almost instinctual understanding of terrain, camouflage, and the art of silent observation. When the Marine Corps recognized his exceptional talent with a rifle, it was less about training a sniper and more about unleashing a force of nature. His initial deployment to Vietnam was a blur of emerald green and crimson red. As a scout sniper, Hathcock quickly distinguished himself, not just for his incredible accuracy, but for his uncanny ability to melt into the environment. His initial deployment to Vietnam was a blur of emerald green and crimson red. As a scout sniper, Hathcock quickly distinguished himself, not just for his incredible accuracy, but for his uncanny ability to melt into the environment. He moved like a ghost, a silent predator, his presence often felt before it was seen, if it was seen at all. His rifle, a Winchester Model 70, became an extension of his will, a tool of precision that spoke with devastating finality. He understood the wind, the humidity, the subtle shifts in light, integrating them all into an almost mystical calculus before each squeeze of the trigger. Early successes piled up, each confirmed kill a testament to his unparalleled skill, saving countless American lives by neutralizing enemy commanders, machine gunners, and intelligence assets. Yet even as his legend grew among his comrades, a quiet unease settled within him. The act of taking a life, even in war, was a heavy burden, a shadow that clung to his soul despite the grim necessity. He was a weapon, undeniably effective, but the cost was etched deep into his psyche. As Hathcock's tally climbed, so too did his notoriety among the enemy. The Viet Cong, initially dismissive of American snipers, soon learned to fear the whispers of white feather. The small, distinctive white feather he wore in his boonie hat, a personal challenge, became a symbol of impending doom for them. His reputation wasn't merely a rumor, it was a tangible force, a psychological weapon that sowed paranoia and terror. He wasn't just killing soldiers, he was killing morale. One daring mission involved infiltrating deep behind enemy lines to neutralize a high-ranking NVA officer whose tactical brilliance had cost American forces dearly. For 3 days, Hathcock stalked his prey through dense jungle, enduring swarms of mosquitoes, leeches, and the ever-present threat of discovery. He moved with the patience of a stone, every muscle controlled, every breath shallow. When the moment came, an almost impossible shot through a narrow gap in the foliage, he held his breath until his lungs burned, the world narrowing to the crosshairs. The single shot rang out, a sharp crack that echoed briefly before being swallowed by the jungle, and the officer fell, his strategic threat extinguished. Another time, he spent days observing a supply route, patiently waiting for the lead truck carrying crucial munitions. When it finally arrived, a perfectly placed shot ignited the fuel tank, sending a fiery explosion ripping through the convoy, crippling enemy logistics for weeks. These were not mere acts of violence. They were surgical strikes delivered with a grim, unwavering focus. Each mission, each life taken, reinforced his growing internal conflict. He was saving his fellow Marines, undoubtedly, but the weight of the kills pressed down on him, a silent, invisible burden. He saw the faces, even if only for a fleeting second, the surprise, the fear, the sudden absence of life. He was a professional, but not a monster. The constant danger, the perpetual hunt, the knowledge that he himself was a prime target, kept his senses perpetually heightened, his nerves frayed. He knew the enemy was actively seeking him, desperate to silence the white feather who had become such a potent symbol of American precision and resilience. The stakes were impossibly high. Every patrol, every observation post, every moment spent in the jungle was a gamble with death. He was a ghost, but even ghosts could be caught. The Viet Cong and NVA commanders, humiliated and infuriated by his effectiveness, placed a bounty on his head, a sum larger than any offered for an American soldier before. They deployed their own elite snipers, men hardened by years of conflict, masters of their own deadly craft, with one singular objective: to hunt down and eliminate Carlos Hathcock. The jungle, already a labyrinth of death, was about to become a personal arena, a deadly game of cat and mouse where the hunter would soon become the hunted. A formidable adversary was emerging from the shadows, a legend in their own right, determined to end the reign of white feather. The legend of the cobra had begun to circulate among the American troops, whispered in hushed tones, a chilling counterpoint to the awe surrounding Hathcock. This North Vietnamese sniper, a woman with an uncanny ability to vanish and reappear, was said to have an equally impressive kill count. Her victims often found with a single, precise shot to the head, their bodies left as grim warnings. She was relentless, methodical, and possessed a preternatural understanding of the jungle, her presence marked only by the absence of sound and the swift, silent death she delivered. Her targets were often American officers, or more disturbingly, Marine snipers. It was clear she was hunting, and her prey was becoming increasingly specific. Hathcock felt her presence long before he saw any direct sign. It was a shift in the jungle's rhythm, a subtle change in the almost imperceptible hum of danger. The air felt heavier, charged with an invisible tension. He knew he was being hunted, and he knew by whom. This was no ordinary enemy soldier. This was a professional, a mirror image of himself, albeit one fighting for the other side. The psychological warfare began subtly, a game of cat and mouse played across miles of unforgiving terrain. Hathcock would find small, almost imperceptible signs of her passing, a displaced leaf, a faint scent of a particular local herb, a disturbed spiderweb, and he knew she was doing the same, perhaps even then watching him from some unseen vantage point. His missions became less about specific targets and more about survival, about outwitting an opponent who seemed to anticipate his every move. He spent agonizing hours in observation posts, his scope sweeping the dense foliage, searching for any anomaly, any glint of light, any unnatural shadow that might betray her position. The waiting was a torment, a slow burn of adrenaline and paranoia. He would set up ambushes, only to find them empty, a silent message from the cobra that she had seen him coming. She, in turn, would leave subtle traps, not designed to kill, but to reveal his presence, to force him to react. Each near miss, each silent challenge, was a testament to their mutual skill and the escalating stakes of their deadly duel. Hathcock's meticulous planning became even more obsessive. He studied maps, analyzed wind patterns, memorized every contour of the land. He learned to read the jungle not just as a place of concealment, but as a chessboard where every move had profound consequences. He imagined her thought process, tried to predict her next action, to get inside her head. He knew she was doing the same with him. This wasn't merely about pulling a trigger, it was about the mental battle, the war of wills. He started noticing patterns in her reported kills, a preference for certain times of day, specific types of terrain. It was a deadly dance, a slow, deliberate convergence of two forces destined to collide. The personal stakes for Hathcock grew exponentially. He had a small team of spotters and fellow snipers, men who trusted him implicitly, who looked to him for guidance and protection. He felt a profound responsibility for their lives, and the thought that the cobra might target them to draw him out gnawed at him constantly. He couldn't afford to make a mistake, not when the lives of his brothers in arms hung in the balance. One sweltering afternoon, while on a reconnaissance mission with a new recruit, a bullet whizzed past Hathcock's ear, kicking up dirt just inches from his face. It was a warning shot, impossibly close, from a distance that defied belief. The young Marine beside him froze, wide-eyed, but Hathcock, his heart hammering, knew it wasn't meant for the recruit. It was a message, a direct challenge from the Cobra. The near-fatal encounter left him shaken, a cold dread settling in his stomach. For the first time he questioned his own invincibility. The legend of White Feather felt fragile. He was no longer just hunting. He was being hunted, and his adversary was every bit his equal, if not more. The jungle had truly become their personal arena, and only one would walk away. The chilling message from the Cobra, a stark reminder of his own mortality, solidified a new, grim resolve within Hathcock. He was no longer merely a hunter. He was a warrior, fighting for survival, not just his own, but for the men under his charge. It was then that the call came, a critical high-risk mission that demanded his unique skills. A key North Vietnamese army supply route had been identified, heavily guarded, and intelligence indicated a crucial command center nestled deep within the jungle, coordinating enemy movements across a significant sector. Eliminating its leadership was paramount to disrupting their offensive capabilities. Hathcock was tasked with leading a small, elite team to infiltrate the area, locate the command post, and neutralize the high-value targets. Among the chosen few for this perilous assignment was Sergeant Miller, a man Hathcock had known and fought alongside for months. Miller was a quiet, unassuming Marine, always efficient, rarely questioning orders, and possessed a keen eye for detail. Hathcock had grown to trust Miller implicitly, relying on his steady presence and methodical approach during countless skirmishes. Their bond, forged in the crucible of combat, felt unbreakable. Yet beneath Miller's calm exterior simmered a quiet resentment, a seed of fear planted by the relentless pressure of the war, perhaps even by Hathcock's own almost mythical status. The constant threat, the knowledge that they were always one step away from a bullet, had begun to fray Miller's nerves, twisting his perception of loyalty and self-preservation. As Hathcock meticulously briefed the team, outlining the intricate infiltration routes and contingency plans, a subtle shift in Miller's demeanor went unnoticed. A flicker of hesitation in his eyes, a slight tremor in his hands as he traced the map, signs that would only become clear in hindsight. The mission commenced under the cloak of a suffocating jungle night. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves, the symphony of insects a constant backdrop to their silent advance. Each step was deliberate, every rustle of foliage a potential threat. They moved like ghosts through the oppressive darkness, Hathcock leading the way, his senses hyper-alert. Suddenly, a tripwire, expertly concealed, snapped taut. An instant later, the jungle erupted. Flares burst overhead, illuminating their position in a blinding emerald light, followed by a torrent of automatic gunfire. The ambush was flawlessly executed, a trap sprung with deadly precision. Hathcock, reacting on pure instinct, shoved Miller to the ground, taking cover behind a thick banyan tree as bullets tore through the air where he had stood moments before. His team scattered, returning fire, but they were severely outnumbered, pinned down by an unseen enemy. It was a massacre in the making. Through the chaos, Hathcock noticed something unnerving. The enemy fire seemed to concentrate on his position, almost as if they knew exactly where he would be. And then, a fleeting image in the flashing light of a distant muzzle, a familiar silhouette retreating into the deeper jungle. Too quickly, too deliberately. It was Miller. The realization hit Hathcock with the force of a physical blow, a cold, sickening certainty that froze his blood. It wasn't just an ambush, it was a betrayal. Information had been leaked, a trap set specifically for him. He barely escaped that night, his team suffering heavy casualties. Crawling through the undergrowth, dodging enemy patrols, his mind reeled. The physical wounds were minor compared to the gaping chasm left by Miller's actions. The man he had trusted, fought alongside, had deliberately led them into a death trap. The betrayal was more than just a tactical setback. It was a shattering blow to his psyche. It tore at the very fabric of his belief in camaraderie, in the bonds that held them together in this hellish war. The venom of deceit seeped into his soul, leaving an indelible scar. The jungle, once a place of calculated risks and known enemies, now felt infinitely more treacherous, for the insidious plot had revealed a deeper, more chilling truth. The enemy could lurk not only in the shadows of the NVA, but potentially within their own ranks. The bitter taste of betrayal lingered, a constant companion as Hathcock received his next, almost suicidal assignment. It was a mission born of desperation, a last-ditch effort to disrupt the North Vietnamese command structure that had become increasingly effective, perhaps even aided by internal leaks. His target, a high-ranking North Vietnamese army general, a strategic mastermind whose presence was destabilizing the entire region. The general was located deep within enemy territory, in a heavily fortified compound, protected by layers of patrols and an almost impenetrable defensive perimeter. The distance from the nearest friendly lines to the general's estimated position was a staggering 1,500 yards, a journey through some of the most unforgiving terrain in Vietnam. This was not a mission for a quick infiltration, a stealthy shot, and an even stealthier exfiltration. This required something far more extreme, a test of endurance and resolve that few men could ever contemplate. Hathcock would have to crawl, not just for hours, but for days. The mere thought of it was agonizing, a slow, torturous advance through mud, dense foliage, and the ever-present threat of discovery. But the sting of Miller's treachery, the image of his fallen comrades, fueled a cold, hard determination within him. This was more than just duty. It was a personal vendetta, a silent promise to those who had paid the ultimate price. He stripped down to his bare essentials, shedding anything that might snag or create a sound. His rifle, a trusted M2, became an extension of his body. He moved with the slowness of a glacier, inch by agonizing inch, his face often pressed into the damp earth, smelling the rich, decaying scent of the jungle floor. Every muscle screamed in protest. Every nerve ending was on high alert. The sun beat down relentlessly during the day, turning the jungle into a suffocating oven, while the nights brought a chilling dampness that seeped into his bones. He rationed his water, each sip a precious commodity, his hunger a dull, constant ache. The sheer physical privation was immense, a relentless assault on his senses and his will. Hours bled into days. The jungle became his entire world, a claustrophobic, hostile environment where every rustle of leaves, every distant bird call, could signal discovery. He saw enemy patrols pass within feet of him, their conversations a low murmur, their boots squelching in the mud. He held his breath, his body rigid, willing himself to become invisible, a part of the earth itself. The psychological torment was relentless. Doubts gnawed at the edges of his resolve. Was it even possible? Could one man truly endure such an ordeal and still retain the precision required for such a critical shot? He thought of the general, orchestrating death and destruction from his secure compound, and a renewed surge of purpose coursed through him. This general represented everything he was fighting against, and everything Miller had betrayed. Flashbacks flickered through his mind, the faces of his men, the sounds of the ambush, the cold, calculating eyes of the enemy. He remembered the precise details of Miller's slight tremor, the way his eyes had avoided Hathcock's gaze just before the mission. Each memory solidified his resolve, hardening his will against the overwhelming odds. He wasn't just crawling for his country. He was crawling for justice, for the memory of those lost, and perhaps for a sliver of redemption in a war that offered so little. Finally, after 4 excruciating days, and what felt like an eternity, he reached his vantage point. He lay motionless, his body a knotted mass of pain and exhaustion, but his eyes, clear and focused, scanned the compound. Through the dense foliage, he could see the general's quarters, a small, unassuming building, yet radiating an aura of power. He set up his rifle, his movements slow and deliberate, each adjustment a testament to years of training and an almost superhuman self-control. His heart hammered against his ribs, not from fear, but from the immense climax of the moment. He had endured the impossible. He had crawled through hell. He finally sighted his target. The general, a portly man with an air of arrogant confidence, emerged onto a small veranda, stretching in the morning sun. Hathcock's finger rested lightly on the trigger, his breathing shallow, controlled. The crosshairs settled perfectly. But then, an unexpected complication arose. Another figure emerged, a young boy, perhaps the general's son, running playfully towards him, throwing a small ball. The boy stopped directly in front of the general, blocking the shot, his innocent laughter echoing faintly across the vast distance. Hathcock froze, his mind racing. The target was clear, but the price of the shot had just become infinitely higher. The boy's innocent presence was a cruel twist of fate, a moral quandary thrust upon Hathcock in the most critical of moments. His finger, which had been poised with lethal intent, now hesitated. The general, unaware of the death hovering just inches away, ruffled the boy's hair, a moment of paternal affection that solidified Hathcock's dilemma. He was a sniper, a killer of men, but not of children. The image of the boy, full of life and joy, clashed violently with the cold precision of his mission. Time seemed to stretch and compress simultaneously, every second an eternity of agonizing calculation. He had come so far, endured so much, yet now, a child stood between him and his objective. Then, as if a silent prayer had been answered, the general gently nudged the boy away. The child, still laughing, darted off the veranda, chasing the ball that had rolled into the garden. The path was clear, the window of opportunity fleeting. Hathcock's breath, held for what felt like an age, slowly exhaled. His focus narrowed, all extraneous thoughts melting away, leaving only the target. The general, now alone and oblivious, adjusted his uniform, a casual movement that would be his last. Hathcock's finger tightened, the world contracting to the single point where crosshairs met flesh. The shot, when it came, was almost imperceptible, a soft whisper lost in the vastness of the jungle. The general crumpled instantly, a puppet whose strings had been abruptly cut. There was no scream, no dramatic fall, just a sudden, lifeless heap. The silence that followed was profound, broken only by the distant chirping of birds, unaware of the life that had just been extinguished. Hathcock remained motionless, his eye still pressed to the scope, watching for any reaction, any sign of discovery. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, a guard emerged from the building, saw the fallen general, and a chaotic frenzy erupted. Shouts pierced the morning air, men ran in every direction, their confusion a testament to the unseen, unheard death that had struck from an impossible distance. Hathcock felt a strange cocktail of emotions. Relief, cold and sharp, washed over him. The mission was accomplished. Justice, in its brutal wartime form, had been served. But beneath the triumph, a profound weariness settled in his bones. The act itself, though necessary, left an indelible mark. He had taken a life, not in the chaos of close combat, but with deliberate surgical precision, from a distance where the victim was little more than a speck. The weight of that responsibility was immense, a silent burden he carried with every shot fired. He methodically disassembled his rifle, his movements practiced and efficient, his mind already planning his exfiltration. The jungle, which had been his sanctuary, now felt like a trap. Every shadow a potential threat. He knew the general's death would send shockwaves, inciting a furious hunt for the phantom sniper. His victory was undeniable, a significant blow to enemy command and morale, but it was also a beacon, drawing every available resource to find the man responsible. As he began his slow, cautious retreat, the distant wails of sirens grew louder, a chilling symphony of vengeance. The triumphant rush of the kill had dissipated, replaced by the grim reality of survival. He had struck a decisive blow. But the war, for Carlos Hathcock, was far from over. In fact, as the sounds of escalating panic swelled behind him, a new, more horrifying threat began to emerge. A fiery crucible that would test his very will to live in ways he could not yet fathom. The jungle, which had just witnessed his greatest triumph, was about to become the stage for his most harrowing trial. The oppressive humidity of the Vietnamese morning weighed heavily on Carlos Hathcock as he rode in the armored personnel carrier, the M113 grumbling and lurching through the dense, unforgiving terrain. The high of his impossible shot, the calculated precision that had felled the enemy general from such an improbable distance, had long since faded. Now, only a gnawing exhaustion remained, a deep-seated weariness that permeated his very bones. The jungle, a place he understood with an almost primal instinct, still held its dangers. But today, fate had decided to introduce a different kind of terror. Inside the cramped metal box, the air was thick with the smell of sweat, diesel, and fear. 7 other Marines, fresh-faced and anxious, shared the space with him, their youthful exuberance a stark contrast to Hathcock's hardened silence. He wasn't assigned to this patrol. He was simply hitching a ride back to base, a brief respite before the next hunt. He watched the passing foliage, his sniper's eyes scanning for any anomaly, any hidden threat, even when off duty. The M113 was a relative sanctuary, or so they all believed, a metal shield against the unseen dangers of the jungle. Suddenly, without warning, the world exploded. A deafening roar ripped through the air, followed by a violent concussion that threw Hathcock against the metal interior. The M113 bucked and screamed, a wounded beast, as a landmine detonated directly beneath it. The force of the blast was immense, tearing through the vehicle's floor, sending shrapnel and debris flying. Immediately, flames erupted, licking at the edges of the gaping hole, spreading with terrifying speed through the fuel lines and ammunition. Chaos reigned, the air filled with the screams of the wounded, the acrid smell of burning fuel, and the metallic tang of blood. Hathcock, though stunned and disoriented, felt an instinct take over, a surge of adrenaline that cut through the shock. He was alive, but the M113 was rapidly becoming an inferno, a metal coffin destined to consume all within it. Without a second thought for his own safety, he began to act. He saw Private Miller, a young radio operator, slumped against the wall, his leg mangled, his face contorted in agony. Another, Corporal Jones, was engulfed in flames, screaming as the fire consumed his uniform. The heat was unbearable, searing his skin through his fatigues, the smoke thick and choking, burning his lungs with every desperate gasp. Panic threatened to overwhelm him, but Hathcock pushed it down, his mind singularly focused on the task at hand. Rescue. He wrestled with the twisted metal of the hatch, his strength born of desperation. The flames danced around him, singeing his hair, blistering his hands. He could feel the intense heat radiating from the floor, threatening to ignite his own clothes. One by one he dragged the wounded Marines from the burning wreckage, pulling them through the smoke and fire, each man a dead weight, each rescue an agonizing struggle against the inferno. He ignored the searing pain on his own body, the growing numbness in his limbs, the dizzying effects of smoke inhalation. His only thought was to get them out, to save them from this fiery tomb. He pulled Miller, then Jones, frantically beating out the flames on his uniform with his bare hands, ignoring the painful burns that blossomed on his palms. He found Sergeant Davis pinned by a collapsing section of the roof, his face pale with shock. With a grunt of effort, Hathcock lifted the heavy metal, freeing the man, then half-carried, half-dragged him clear of the blazing vehicle. 7 Marines. 7 lives he pulled from the very jaws of death. As he finally stumbled away from the M113, collapsing onto the muddy ground, the world spun. The roaring flames cast grotesque shadows, illuminating the horror of the scene. The M113 was a blackened, twisted hulk, its interior a molten hell. He lay there, gasping for air, the smell of burnt flesh and scorched metal thick in his nostrils. The pain, which he had suppressed, now surged through him with brutal intensity. His left arm and leg throbbed. His face felt raw and tight, and the skin on his hands was a mass of angry blisters. His legend as a sniper had been built on precision, on calculated distance, on taking life. Now, in this searing inferno, he had faced a different kind of enemy, an indiscriminate force of destruction, and had responded with an equally fierce, albeit selfless, will to preserve life. He was no longer the unseen, untouchable ghost of the jungle. He was a man, severely burned, vulnerable, and in agonizing pain. The realization hit him with the force of another explosion. His war, the one he knew, was over. But a new, far more personal and arduous battle had just begun. He was evacuated from the scene, his world shrinking from the vastness of the jungle to the confines of a medical chopper. His future uncertain, his body irrevocably altered. The journey back to a semblance of normal life was an odyssey of agony for Carlos Hathcock. The medical evacuation from Vietnam was merely the first step in a long, grueling process that would redefine his existence. Days bled into weeks, weeks into months, within the sterile confines of military hospitals. Each morning brought a new battle against the searing pain of his burns, the constant threat of infection, and the crushing weight of his altered reality. Skin grafts, slow and excruciating, became a grim routine, each new layer of donated flesh a testament to the fire that had consumed so much of his own. His body, once a finely tuned instrument of war, was now a landscape of scars, a constant, painful reminder of the inferno. Beyond the physical torment, the invisible wounds festered. Nightmares, vivid and relentless, dragged him back to the fiery M113, to the screams of burning men, to the acrid smell of scorched flesh. He would wake in a cold sweat, the phantom pain of fire licking at his skin, the sounds of battle echoing in his ears, the psychological scars of combat, compounded by the trauma of his injuries, manifested as a profound sense of isolation. The world outside the hospital walls seemed distant, alien. He struggled with the crushing weight of post-traumatic stress disorder, a silent enemy that stalked his waking hours and tormented his sleep. The once quiet, focused sniper now grappled with chronic pain and an emotional landscape ravaged by war. Yet, Hathcock refused to be defined by his injuries. The Marine Corps, recognizing the profound impact of his heroism, offered him an early medical discharge. But the spirit of the white feather, the unwavering dedication to his comrades and his craft, burned fiercely within him. He chose to stay, to fight another battle, one for purpose and legacy. Though his days as a frontline sniper were over, his unparalleled knowledge and experience were invaluable. He committed himself to training the next generation of Marine Corps snipers, transforming his personal tragedy into a profound contribution. He poured his heart and soul into the sniper school at Quantico, Virginia. With patience and meticulous detail, he taught young recruits the art of precision marksmanship, the psychology of the hunt, and the immense responsibility that came with the rifle. He shared his hard-won lessons from the jungles of Vietnam, not just about ballistics and camouflage, but about the mental fortitude required to endure, to survive, and to make the impossible shot. His scarred hands, once steady on a rifle, now guided the hands of aspiring marksmen. His voice, once whispered on the wind, now resonated with the authority of experience, imparting wisdom that saved lives. Carlos Hathcock's enduring legacy transcended the battlefield. He shaped the modern sniper program, his methodologies and insights becoming foundational to Marine Corps doctrine. He taught them patience, discipline, and the profound ethical weight of taking a life. He instilled in them the understanding that a sniper was not merely a killer, but a protector, a force multiplier, and often the silent guardian of his comrades. His contributions ensured that the lessons learned in the crucible of Vietnam would not be forgotten, but rather forged into the training of future warriors. Decades later, long after the war had faded from the headlines, Carlos Hathcock remained a testament to resilience and duty. He passed away in 1999, his body ravaged by multiple sclerosis, a complication believed to be linked to his injuries. But his spirit, the legend of the white feather, lived on. He was remembered not just for the impossible shots or the hundreds of enemy lives he took, but for the 7 lives he saved from the burning M113, for the courage he displayed in the face of unimaginable pain, and for his unwavering dedication to his fellow Marines. The quiet man from Arkansas, who once stalked the jungles of Vietnam, found his ultimate redemption not in victory on the battlefield, but in the enduring legacy of service, mentorship, and the indomitable human spirit that refused to surrender, even when faced with the most profound of personal infernos.